Hello, infidels. I want to talk about Christ the King, the 100th anniversary of the feast of Christ the King by Pius XI, 1925. In between the two world wars, he was concerned about nations, not just individuals, but nations not honoring Christ as King. And so he made this feast, and this is the 100th year. It's 1925, so we're in 2025. And basically we gotta, the key is we have to make Christ the King in every area. If we're in education, we gotta bring Christ into education. If we're in the medical field, bring Christ into the medical field. If we're in sports, bring Christ into sports. Whatever it is, we have to bring Christ into from not only privately, yes, we have to have a private devotion to Christ, but then we also have to have a public devotion, and that's the difference. Now, they say separation of church and state, and we can agree with that to a degree, but here's the thing. If we don't declare Christ publicly, then we're going to lose a lot of ground in the culture. We're going to lose a lot of ground if we don't proclaim the doctrines of the church publicly. You're going to have, especially in the areas of mortal sin, we got to say no. And we got to fight, do the best we can. But people keep saying separation of church and state, separation. Do what you want privately, but publicly, you cannot, force anything on anyone. But hey, wait a minute now. Wait a minute. There's no way. Every inch of this universe belongs to Christ the King. So we can't deny Christ the King publicly in any area. We cannot, no one's allowed to tell us that you can't proclaim Christ in publicly, because how in the world are we going to turn around and face Christ himself and say, oh Lord, they told me I couldn't proclaim you because there's a separation of church and state, so I couldn't share the gospel. Now that's ridiculous. You can't do that. You gotta say yes to Christ and no to them. You gotta do the best you can. I mean, how did the apostles turn the Roman Empire upside down until they got a Caesar that was named Constantine, that was friendly to the church? How did they do that? Well, they proclaimed Christ not only privately but publicly, until they had an empire that was converted. And after that, I mean, there was a lot of bloodshed before that, but after Constantine, you almost had you had about 1,000 years of Christendom, Christian civilization, all because the apostles would not compromise, and they kept getting converts with people in very high positions. They kept declaring the gospel. They wouldn't accept separation of church and state. This is only a private thing. So long as you keep it private, that's okay. You can't be public. Anyway, as I wrap this up, we got Pius XI. He saw the flaw of separation of church and state, and he said, no, we got to take Christ into the public realm. Not only privately, but also publicly. But we got to do it with humility and with love. We can't be You know, there's something about Christian nationalism. We don't want to be like that. Remember, Christ in humility said, "My kingdom is not of this world." And he was very humble. So when we do present Christ in the culture, and we have to do it, we have to do it with humility and with love, and not triumphalism. And but we got to stand our ground. We got to say, "Hey, this is the way it's got to be." We got to, we're representing the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and He has divine rights to these things. So we need to proclaim Christ the King. This is 100th year anniversary coming up. It's going to be in, depending on which calendar you follow, either maybe the end of October or the end of the year. Christ the King. Mark it down, baby. We're going to do this. Let's roll.